Hey y'all, my name is Adina Barnett Miller, but I'm known to my students as Mrs. B. I've been passionate about West Virginia history for as long as I can remember, but my mom would tell you it all started when I was 3 years old and she bought me a West Virginia counties puzzle at Gino's Pizza. I've taught history in Ripley, West Virginia for over 20 years now, and I'm an adjunct professor who teaches college West Virginia history to high school students. Please join me for West Virginia History with Mrs. B, a field trip across the Mountain State to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. Hey y'all, it's West Virginia History with Mrs. B, and I'm coming to you from Wayne County, West Virginia, and we are today going to talk about a really hard topic in West Virginia history, and that is the Marshall University plane crash. And so we are actually in a place I have never been before, but I have always wanted to visit to pay my respects, and that is at the actual crash site of the plane, and that's where we're going to begin today in our discussion of this tragedy of monumental proportions. And so we are here on a hillside in Wayne County. We are less than a mile from the Tri-State Airport. You actually can see there's poles right up here on the hillside that are like the warning lights for the planes. And so what we're gonna look at is the actual crash site they have set aside with this platform and of course a West Virginia road marker sign. So let's talk about this sign and talk about where we are and talk about what this history means, not just for West Virginia, but I think it's for the entire country. You know, this is a story that has always been hard for West Virginians. It's always been extremely moving and personal for West Virginians, but then after the movie We Are Marshall came out, this became a story that was touching to everybody. And so this West Virginia road marker sign denotes that this is the Marshall plane crash site, and so the plane will crash on the night of November 14th, 1970. Marshall was coming home. They had just played East Carolina. They lost, and to get home they got on a plane. It was a Southern Airways DC-9, and they were less than a mile from the runway. It was a foggy night. It had rained here in Huntington, and the plane is going to crash here into the hillside. There are going to be 75 victims, which include 36 Marshall University football players, 9 coaches and administrators, 25 fans, and other people that were connected to the community, and an air crew of 5. Absolutely no one will survive this disaster, this plane crash. And this plane crash is the worst sports-related air tragedy in U.S. history. And you know, every year we stop on November 14th, on November 14th to think about the 75 who were lost in 1970. And I hope that it's a tradition that will continue here in West Virginia, that we take time to think, to pray, to contemplate this entirely preventable loss. You know, if things could have been done differently, they could have landed in Charleston, they could have, you know, things could have been different, but it is what it is. And this site is a sacred space for Marshall fans, people who love West Virginia, people who love sports, people who love the movie. And so I'm going to show you a little bit of what's here. This is a makeshift memorial space here on the platform, and you can see where someone has put a decal with 75, and someone put out pennies on that. And then I'm going to pick this up and put it right back. Someone put their Marshall University 3-miler, 3.25 miler from November 5th, 2023 medal here. And you can see on the back is the memorial fountain, which is down at the school. We'll show you later. And it has the quote from the movie, We Are Marshall. And it gets me every time. I'm going to start crying.
You want me to read it?
I got it. In the middle of Huntington, West Virginia, there's a river, and next to this river there is a steel mill, and next to this steel mill there is a school. In the middle of the school there is a fountain, and each year on the exact same day, on the exact same hour, the water to this fountain is turned off, and in this moment, once every year, time stands still. So you've got other things where people have left pictures of their family members. And then here is a newspaper clipping. It says a father's letter to his son. It says, "To all of us that have son, a tear comes to our eyes when we read the laments of a broken-hearted father, such as Robert A. Harris Sr. of Cincinnati, Ohio, whose son, Robert Jr., young quarterback, who went to his death last Saturday night in the crash of the Marshall University football team's airplane. As the senior, Mr. Harris sat in his hotel room in Huntington, waiting word on the identification of his son's body. He wrote these words in a letter to his departed boy. This tragedy has left me lost in the greatest sorrow of my life. By the same token, it has left me with heartfelt thanks to my God for a son that gave me such joy and love. For a time of a supposed generation gaps, we communicated so well. In a time of lack of belief in anything, you and I became more aware and appreciative of our God and what he meant to us. We know that with God all things are possible, and without him there is nothing, and we are nothing. In a couple of days I have been sitting here waiting a call to identify the home in which you lived. Your many friends and the acquaintances have stopped by to offer their condolences. By talking to them, I realized you had an inner peace, maturity, and warmth that came through to allow you to make so many friends. You and I never questioned the will of God, but accepted it. And I will never deviate from our pact. And I will accept the will of God in spite of my feeling of loss that defies description. I will accept the will of our God without question. I know that you're with God now, and he will allow you to be with me because he knows how much I love you. We will never again be separated. You will be with me, and I will be with you, our God, and for all eternity. I love you, my son, and I have always loved you, and shall always continue to love you. Please never leave my side, my son." So, the directions on Google are a little wonky to make it out here. You just need to follow 52 South, and then there's going to be a road that is a dead end. This road dead ends at the top of the hill, and you'll follow that up here to the plane crash site. It's very quiet. We're the only car here. So if you want to come out and pay your respects and spend a few moments thinking of those and what a tragedy and what a loss this was for Marshall University, I definitely encourage you to come out here. Hey y'all, we are now in the Spring Hill Cemetery here in Huntington, West Virginia. So we're now in Cabell County, and I wanted to give you the view out because the leaves are mostly gone. We're up on the hill right above downtown Huntington. If you look straight ahead this way, you're gonna see towers, which are the two biggest dorms on Marshall University's campus. So we're right off of Memorial Boulevard, and so this cemetery here in Huntington is a site of one of the Marshall memorials, which we're going to show you, and several of the players and coaches are buried up here. And I've already bawled my eyes out and been on my knees. I didn't know I was going to have such a visceral response to being here, but I'm really glad that we've come up here to pay our respects and just show you all and talk about the history. But I wanted you to see where we were in relation to downtown Huntington. So we're right off, it's what I think 20th Street, which is called Marshall Memorial Boulevard. And so we're going to take you up and show you the memorial itself. We are now with the Marshall Memorial and the burial site here in Spring Hill Cemetery. And as you can see right here, this is the marker for Rick Tolley, who was the coach of the team. And he's so young, only 30 years old. But if you walk up here closer, you're gonna see these names of the deceased, which include Thomas Brown, Kevin Gilmore, David Griffith, Barry Nash, Tom Zorbel, and Alan G. Skeens. And so I wanted to show you all this. This is why I was sobbing. We're just a few days since the memorial for the year, and so I'm gonna cry again. This is my fellow Jackson Countian. Alan Gene Skeens, who died on that plane in 1970. His graduating classmates remember him yearly with a wreath, and here's his photo. And so on one side of the wreath is Marshall green and white, and then of course on the other side is Ravenswood Red Devil red and black. But at the end of the day, we're all Jackson Countians. So he's one of the bodies that was never identified, that's buried here along with the other ones. They have the 6 bodies here. So here they are listed again on the wall. It says, "They shall live on in the hearts of their families and friends forever." And this memorial records their loss to the university and the community. And so here you have Thomas Wayne Brown, Kevin Francis Gilmore, David Deering Griffith, Barry Winston Nash, Alan Gene Skeens, and Thomas Donovan Zorbel. And so as you can see, people come up here and they leave flowers and they leave mementos like this "We Are Heard Strong" pin, and they leave their tickets. And these are not new tickets that they're leaving behind, they're several years old. And their Marshall hat, my grandpa had that Marshall hat. So, but these are the ones, their bodies couldn't be identified, and so they're buried here. And then on this side, it lists all of the staff members who were lost on the plane. So Donald Booth, Herbert Brackett, Albert Carroll, Gary George, Charles Coots, Frank Loria, Eugene Morehouse. That's
Keith Morehouse's dad, who was a broadcaster. And if I can jump back real quick, Frank Paul Loria, he was an All-American defensive back for Virginia Tech back in the late 60s, teammate of Frank Beamer, and he became an assistant coach at Marshall. Died in the crash. Baseball field that Salem University plays at,
It's
named for Frank
him.
Loria.
I'm glad you mentioned that, honey. So little Keith Morehouse, his character in We Are Marshall kills me every time. And to think that, you know, we watched him every day growing up on WSAZ talking about sports. Here's James Moss, Jeffrey Nathan, Brian O'Connor, James Schroer. Yeah, and Ricky Tolley. And then they've got the flight crew listed, which includes Captain Frank Abbott, Danny Deese, Charlene Pote, Jerry Randolph Smith, and Patricia Vaught. My grandpa had that hat, I'm telling y'all. And then there were supporters on the plane. It wasn't just the team and the staff, but these were the people that were the diehards of the team, the devoted fans who were on the plane. And you can see here there's many with the same last names, like Charles and Rachel Arnold, Joseph and Margaret Chambers, Ray and Shirley Hagley, Arthur Harris. Then you've got Emmett and Elaine Heath, James Gerald, and of course Cynthia Gerald, Keith Jones, Mike Prestera. You've got two Prestons, Glenn and Phyllis, Herbert and Josephine Proctor, the Ralstons, Helen and Matthew, Parker Ward and Norman Weichman. And then here are the guys on the team on this wall. So you can see, starting at the top, James Adams, Mark Andrews, Michael Blake, Dennis Blevins, Willie Bluford, Larry Brown, Thomas Brown, Roger Childers, Stuart Cottrell, Richard Dardinger, David DeBoard, Kevin Gilmore, David Griffith, Arthur Harris, Robert Harris, Bobby Hill, Joe Hood, James Howard, Marcelo Laterman, yeah, Richard Lech, Barry Nash, Patrick Norrell, or Norrell, I bet it's Norrell, James Patterson, Scotty Reese, John Rapassi, yeah, Larry Sanders, Charles Saylor, Arthur Shannon, Lionel Shoebridge, Alan Skeens, Jerry Steinbach, Daniel Tackett, Robert Van Horn, Roger Vanover, Freddie Wilson, John Young, and Thomas Zorble. So they listed all 35 team members here. This is just a beautiful monument. So I definitely recommend, if you're here in Huntington, that you make the trip to Spring Hill Cemetery to pay your respects. There are green Marshall Memorial signs that make it really easy to follow.
And I want to point out too, one of the little trinkets left down here is the ODU pin. You know, that's not, you know, a longtime opponent of the herd. That is a, you know, recent team that's come into existence. And
absolutely,
Marshall's just started playing them a few years ago in Conference USA in the Sun Belt. So it's not just for Marshall fans. This is kind of for everybody.
Everyone who loves Marshall comes to Marshall. They see JMU right there too, and newer opponent. So I really appreciate it's not just those of us who love Marshall that are coming. It's those that love football, that love, you know, the sport, that love the movie, that love Huntington, love this community, love this state, that are coming and paying their respects. Hey y'all, we are in the Memorial Campus Center here at Marshall University, and they have a interactive memorial in the Student Center, and I wanted to show you some of the West Virginians who are, if you tap on the screen, as you can see I'm doing, who are available to talk about. And so the first one I'm going to talk about is this guy right here. This is Jim Shorty Moss, who was a Huntington native. Imagine that. And he's the offensive coordinator. He graduated from Huntington East. He went to WVU. He played professional football. And he is going to be get a master's degree from Marshall, and he has a two-year-old daughter at the time of the crash, and he's going to be one of the folks that's on the plane that we lose. Here is head coach Rick Tolley, and Rick Tolley was another person from West Virginia. He was from Mullins in Wyoming County, and he played for Coach Ray Caldwell. He played basketball, baseball, as well as football. He went to Virginia, what they called VPI, Virginia Polytechnic Institute at the time. It's now what is Virginia Tech. And so he was an athlete, and then he went into coaching, which is what this is about. And the fact that, you know, Marshall wasn't having a very good season at the time of the crash, but that doesn't matter. You know, win and losses don't matter when human lives are lost. And then here's another guy from West Virginia. This is Frank Loria. I just clicked a button. This is Frank Loria. Loria was another one of the native West Virginians. He was from Clarksburg. He was an All-American defensive backfield. He was a defensive backs coach. And he also went to VPI, and he graduated in 1967. So he was a graduate of Notre Dame High School. And so I'm going to show you the players who were native West Virginians. The first is this guy right here, number 30. His name was Dickie Carter, and he was from Man. He was not on the flight, but this was his third season on the team. There was also number 35, and that's Barry Nash. Barry Nash is actually from Mason County, and so he was from Henderson, West Virginia, which is just right south of Point Pleasant, and he graduated from Point Pleasant High School, and he was on the plane. He did not have a football scholarship. He was a walk-on. And it points out here that in his memory that a student at Point Pleasant High School every year is awarded the Barry Nash Award at the school's football banquet. So another one, we have 3 in a row. One is number 58. This is Frank James. He was not on the flight as well. He graduated from Barboursville High School, which is now Cabell Midland High School if you're from West Virginia. And so he was honorable mention All-State. It says he was big and rugged. He was ineligible to participate in spring practice. So then we have 59. This is Jackson County native Alan Skeens. He was from Ravenswood High School. He was a walk-on on the team, and this was his first ever road trip to East Carolina. So he got to travel with the team for the very first time, and then we lost him. And then you've got number 60, who is also from Cabell County. He's from Milton High School. Barboursville, Milton combined to become Cabell Midland, but at the time they were separate high schools. He is said he was a solid performer. He had plenty of competition in the interior, but that he was, this was from the football game guide in 1970. It says he had size and strength, so was a fine punter. Okay, so let's keep going. We also have number 67 who was on the team, and that was Michael Blake. Not only was he a native West Virginian, but Michael Blake was from Huntington, and he graduated from Huntington East High School. So back in the day, there used to be 2 separate high schools. There was Huntington and Huntington East, and then in the 90s they became Huntington High. But he was a Huntington High grad. He was first team All-State. He was an outstanding wrestler. He was a great competitor, and he said he was an outstanding asset to the Marshall line. Another player was number 80. Number 80 was from Bluefield, West Virginia, down in the southern coalfields, and that was Dennis Blevins. He was a wide receiver. He went to Bluefield Park Central High School, which I'm assuming is now Bluefield High School, part of that consolidation. They called him a long ball. They said he had one of the long bomb plays of last year. He had 5 catches of over 30 yards each. He said he could have developed in one of the top pass catchers in the nation. So another one that was lost from West Virginia. And then there was also number 86, who is John Young, who was from Buchanan, West Virginia, which is where I went to college. And so he graduated from Buchanan High School, which is now what is Buchanan Middle School. And now they've built a bigger Buchanan Upshur High School right outside of town. Said he had an outstanding freshman year at Marshall, sat out in that 1969 season, and he was ready with good size, good speed. So very sad. Another person I want to mention too is, isn't just football players on the plane. Jeff Nathan, here he is. He was the sports editor of the Parthenon. Parthenon is the Marshall University school newspaper. It still is to this day. And so he was the sports editor for the paper, and so he was on the plane. And so the sports editor, Jeff Nathan, was a junior at Marshall. He was from Parkersburg. It said his column appeared as hoofbeats. He loved being a reporter. He turned in 6 or more stories a week. Holy moly. And he was an optimist about the Thundering Herd. He said he predicted a win for almost every game, and when he didn't, he'd write, "I hope I'm wrong." The East Carolina game was the Hoofbeats' 30th story, and the Parthenon chose to leave his column blank except for the number 30, the journalistic tag for end of story. So I think that's all I gotta say here. So many West Virginians lost in the plane crash. So many West Virginians feel connected to this story. And so we wanted to pay honor to some of those folks that we lost from West Virginia on that fateful day, November 14th, 1970. Hey folks, we are now on the campus of Marshall University in front of the Memorial Student Center, and we are standing with the Memorial Fountain. This is a tangible reminder for Marshall University students as they walk by of the 75 that were lost on November 14th, 1970. Every year there is a ceremony that is held here to pay honor to all those lives that were lost on the plane, including players, coaching staff, alumni, as well as the plane crew. And so the memorial was earlier this week, and so we get to see what was left behind. And I mean, I'm sure if we counted, there are 75 white roses that are here at the fountain, laying in honor of all of those folks who lost their lives on the plane. And so I'm really glad we came today to see the fountain, because we get to see this, and campus is pretty much quiet right now because everybody's home for Thanksgiving. So this sign says the Memorial Fountain, November 14th, 1970. On this dark, overcast Saturday evening at 7:47 p.m., a chartered DC-9 airliner plunged through the drizzle into a hillside as it approached Tri-State Airport at Huntington, West Virginia, claiming the lives of all 75 aboard. Lost in the fiery crash were 37 members of the Marshall University football team, 5 of their coaches, 7 university staff members, and 21 faithful supporters, as well as 5 airplane crew members. And we've read those names at the cemetery. But important to note, they shall live on in the hearts of their families and their friends forever. And this memorial records their loss to the university and to the community and to the state of West Virginia and to the world. Because I think this is a story that touches the world to this day. And people, feel a connection to what happened here, because this could be any team, this could be any town, this could be any state that this happened to, but it happened here, and it happened to Marshall University, and it happened in 1970. There were, if you've seen the movie, there were calls to end the team right then and there, and thankfully with some long-sightedness, thinking ahead, they didn't end the team. They were able to bring the team back. They started with the Young Thundering Herd with freshman players. And so they're going to have some highs and lows throughout the years. I'm thankful as a kid, I became a Marshall fan very, very early in life when my cousin Madison was recruited to play for Marshall, and he was a 4-year starter. And so that's when I was introduced to all of this lore, well before the internet, well before the movie. And so this story has been part of my life. I've always stopped on November 14th and thought about those loss, because I had a family member on the team, and so we followed the team. My grandparents followed the team. We traveled on the weekends to go to games, either drive here to Huntington, or my grandparents went all over the country to watch my cousin Madison play. And so this story's super personal to me. And so Marshall got a new stadium in 1991, which is what we call today the Jome, which is the Joan C. Edwards Stadium. But I'm thankful I got to be at the last game at Fairfield and those kind of things. So Marshall has had a great climb up from those early years of the Young Thundering Herd to go on to win national championships. Really glad I was here to watch that happen in the Joan and watch him pull the goalpost down, and to watch people like Randy Moss and Chad Pennington and to see them play. And so now there's a new generation of kids who grew up learning the story about the 75, but also learning this hallowed history of a strong, vibrant college football program, which is Marshall University. And I think that is a testament of all the people that were on this plane and all those people that were before them and all those that came after. And so they were able to have this, build a team up from the ashes, and now, Marshall is quite a powerhouse in whatever conference they're competing in. And so I think it's just awesome to remember. And so I appreciate you all tuning in and remembering with us today. We're here in Huntington at Marshall University, and we will never forget. Thanks, y'all, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to West Virginia History with Mrs. B on both Facebook and YouTube.